Have I turned the mirror? The look down. Class is empty. Okay. Yes. Um.
Just refrain. You think she's fine if they're not being distractions? Like they are over here.
Good morning. We are in Judges 9. And last week when we left off, we saw that uh, Jeroboam had passed away, and then they made a covenant with Baal, Bereth, or the covenant with the L of the covenant. After they had already made a covenant, they knew that their covenant was with Yah. And so I'm just going to briefly go over some of the things from chapter 8. So, verse 31 through 38, and it says Jerubbabel had a baby by his concubine. And so we all know what the concubine is, right? Usually, when they go in and the war spoils, they take the women and the cattle, and they can take the women of the city. And so she was just something extra that came along. And so, from that union, was a child born who was Abimelech, and we know his name meant what?
The father of the king.
Father of the king. And so Shechem was a Canaanite city, but was an Israelite city by the giving of spoilage or them going in and taking the land. So the tribe of Manasseh was there. So we know that Israel committed apostasy because they traded one El for Elohim. So they traded their 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 Elohim, and just kind of go over some things. We know Judges is the book of those that judged over Israel, but we know Israel didn't have a king because their king was Yah. But we do know that in verse 8, in chapter 8, they had asked for a king. And that has been the problem all along, looking for somebody to rule over them. And it's when I was looking at the lesson, it's a trip because you have the ruler of the universe as your captain, your king, your the one who defends you and fights for you, but you want someone else, and you basically tell him it's like we're in covenant, we're in a marriage basically. I want somebody else that hasn't been as good to me. I want what they got over here, that kind of thing. That looking at the grass greener on the other side. So we know that Israel was always appointed judges, but they weren't given a king because Yah is their king. And so we know that a king governs according to the law and interprets the law, assesses evidence, and a judge, excuse me, not a king, but a judge, and a judge cannot appoint himself. He presents and controls how hearings and trials unfold, but he is ordained judge. He doesn't go in and set himself up as judge. So that's kind of looking at 8. And so we get into 9. And so we'll look at 9, and we'll start from verse 1. And it said, and Abimelech, the son of Jerubbaal, went to Shechem unto his mother's brethren, and communed with them, and with all the family of the house of his mother's father, saying, Speak, I pray you, in the ears of all the men of Shechem, whether it be whether it's better for you, either that all the sons of Jerubbaal, which are 60 persons, reign over you, or that one reign over you. Remember also that I am your bone and your flesh. And his mother's brethren spake to him in the ear of all the men of Shechem all these words, and their hearts inclined to follow Abimelech, for they said, He is our brother. And they gave him 60 pieces of silver out of the house of Baal Berith, wherewith Abimelech hired vain and light persons, which followed him. And he went into his father's house at Ophir, and slew his brethren, the sons of Jerubbaal, being 60 persons upon one stone. Notwithstanding, yet Jotham, the youngest son of Jerubbaal, was left, for he hid himself. So, just if you want to have reference to what a concubine is, or the son of the concubine, you can look at Deuteronomy 21:17 and 8. And again, kind of like laying out the scene. Before in 8, there was sort of bad blood between Ephraim and Manasseh because they were, well, why didn't you come get us when you got ready to fight? And, one tribe being larger than the other, flexing their muscle, or they whatever they were doing and so you see Abimelech going to his mother's people. He didn't go to his father's people, his mother's people. So then again, the mother was a concubine in Shechem, which was also the Canaanites, some Canaanite people. So you went to your mother's people and you persuade them of this huge, uh, confounded story. He's like, okay, do you want all 70? Now we're looking how the enemy works too, because we know technically, 70 sons can't all rule over and be king. And Israel had no king. So the other nations had kings, and that was Israel's problem. They wanted what the other nations had. They wanted a king like the other nations had. So the Canaanites and the other ones around them knew about what kings were, but Yah was Israel's king. So he goes to his mother's people, because he couldn't have came to his father's people talking about no king, because his daddy just said, I don't want to be your king. So those other 70 sons, I don't believe they had it in their mind to be king, because their father was the judge. He wasn't a king either. But we talked about that names mean things. He gave his son a name, and the son mixed with this Canaanite mother and whatever other customs were going on. You could see where this was birthed from. So we can look at Exodus 13:2, and we know again, technically 70 sons can't all rule, even if they were, the birth. And Exodus 13, yes, yeah, right, yeah. Then they'd all have to be firstborn also to have the birthright of the father. So in 8 it said that these children were the children of Zerubbabel's own loins, which meant from his marriages. So it basically sets apart this one son. So you can see, paint the picture. You can see I'm not making up any of what I'm saying. And we also know that Shechem was located between two coastal plains, and so it was in the Jordan Valley, and it was a crossroad for several trade routes. And whoever ruled Shechem controlled the countryside. So we can kind of see where where his whole vain idea came from. He's looking at power, position, ruling over. He gonna control the trade and how things gonna come and go. So he looking at it from a different point of view. So already in his heart, he had already devised a plan. And we know, excuse me, I'm dropping my cue cards. We know that Israel, again, knows that they don't have a king. They have judges. They don't have kings. So we know that this whole plot, he had to go to his mother's people to make this work. And so they gave him 70 pieces of silver. And so when you look at that, you see that he had already devised a wicked scheme and plan, and he thought of his brothers as worthless, really, because when you look at the silver and what it represents, 30 pieces of silver is the amount you would pay for a slave who was gorged by an ox, or like if you wounded or killed, that was a slave. That was the redemption for a slave dying. 30 pieces. So you got 70 pieces of silver, which meant each one of your brothers was worth one coin to you. So basically worthless. So it's just showing. It's a picture of what his heart is and what his heart is like. And so you can see that for compensation of a slave, Exodus 21 through 32. And it's for a slave's death. And so the money came from the treasury of the temple. And then he went to his father's hometown and he slew his brothers. You can see that in verse 5. He went to his father's house and he slew his brothers, but before that he hired worthless, vain men. And we know worthless in this text means, it's your Hebrew Strong's 7386, rakes, or empty. So empty men, not full of nothing, just empty, and I guess whatever comes they accept. And so, and unimportant. And you'll see the word is Pakaz 63:48. And Ecclesiastes 10:3 and 6 talks about a fool in high position. And if somebody has it, you can read it. Here's an outline if you want. Have an outline. It's Ecclesiastes 10:3-6. So we see he revealed his heart towards his father. Also, his heart was more concerned with power, position, and we know Mark 9:35 says, "He who will be first must be very last and servant of all." He exalted himself, basically. Somebody you want to read Ecclesiastes? Oh, you don't? I'll just go ahead and continue on. So we're here at verses 6-21. Shechem makes Abimelech king, and Jotham prophesies. And all the men of Shechem gathered together, and all the house of Milo, and went and made Abimelech king by the plain of the pillar that was in Shechem. And if you remember what where this place was, the plain of the pillar, it is, they gathered at the sacred poles. So who did the Canaanites worship? Baal, and they had many gods, Ashtaroth. And so the poles of Ashtaroth were in Milo. Milo means house of the fortress. And if you remember in Judges 6:25, or it's Milo, or strong fortification. Judges 6:25. This is where that's a reference. But Abimelech's coronation took place where Joshua put the books of the law in Joshua 24:1-6. So they were here breaking the law. So they went and made Abimelech king by the plain of the pillars that was in Shechem, where the law was given, and made a covenant with another. And we see this very often, and a picture that just that was given to me this morning as I was going through this was, you have people who say that they are following law, or that the law is done away with, but they say that it's done away with while picking up the very book of the law where the law is written, but saying it's done away with, making a covenant with another because somebody else tells you, hey, basically you choosing kings again, committing treason, because the book of the law says that we're supposed to do and keep all of these things. And then when another one rises up and says something else, you go and you agree with it and you follow him, when already the law has been given at this place. And so it says, and then when they told it to Jotham, he went and stood at the top of Mount Gerizim, and lifted up his voice and cried and said unto them, hearken unto me, ye men of Shechem, that Yah may hearken unto you. And this is where you'll see one of the first, not first, but of many, but parables. And so he stood at Gerizim. Does anybody remember what happened at Gerizim? You remember at Gerizim and at Ebal, one stood on one side and one stood on the other. I believe it was in Deuteronomy, and one told out the blessings and the other the curses. Where if you do this in the land that I give you, I'll bless you, and this and this. Gerizim is symbolically calling y'all's attention to the entire thing. So, curses. Yes. Look at it. It said, they stood at the top of Mount Gerizim, lifted up his voice, and cried and said, and hearken unto me, men of Shechem, that Yah may hearken unto you. And so I'll go on and read the parable in a minute, but he went to the top of the mountain, because clearly at the top of the mountain in the valley there's an echo, so everybody can hear what it is you're saying. So nobody's going to miss out on what's being said if I'm at the top yelling down to the valley, because uh, you go to Grand Canyon, or you're going to hear the echo everywhere. So he proclaimed what it was, and he made sure that they heard him. So he was symbolically calling Yah's attention to them. And this has happened a couple of times. You'll see it in 2 Samuel 12, 1 through 4, and 2 Kings 14, 9 through 10. So he says, the trees went forth on a time to anoint a king over them. And they said unto the olive tree, reign over us. But the olive tree said unto them, should I leave my fatness, wherewith by me they honor Yah and man, and go to be promoted over the trees? And the tree said to the fig tree, come thou and reign over us. But the fig tree said unto them, should I forsake my sweetness and my good fruit, and go to be promoted over the trees? Then said the trees unto the vine, come thou and reign over us. And the vine said unto them, should I leave my wine, which cheereth Yah and man, and go to be promoted over the trees? Then said all the trees unto the bramble, come thou and reign over us. And the bramble said unto the trees, if in truth ye anoint me king over you, then come and put your trust in my shadow, and if not, let fire come out of the bramble and devour the cedars of Lebanon. Now therefore, if ye have done truly and sincerely in that ye have made Abimelech king, and if ye have dealt well with Jerubbaal and his house, and have done unto him according to the deservings of his hands, for my father fought for you and adventured his life far, and delivered you out of the hand of Midian, and ye are risen up against my father's house this day, and have slain his sons 70 persons upon one stone, and made Abimelech the son of his maidservant. This is good. Maidservant king over the men of Shechem, because he is your brother. If ye have dealt truly and sincerely with Jerubbaal and his house this day, then rejoice ye in Abimelech, and let him also rejoice in you. But if not, let fire come out from Abimelech, and devour the men of Shechem and the house of Milo, and let the fire come out from the men of Shechem and from the house of Milo, and devour Abimelech. And Jotham ran away and fled to went to Beer, and dwelt there for fear of Abimelech his brother. So when you look at this parable, you see three different examples. First, he says, then the olive tree cries out. The trees cried out. So we know that the trees mean people, symbolic for people. Trees are symbolic for people. And you'll see that in Psalms 52 and 8. And the olive, or the olive oil, is good for the fatness. He says, should I leave my fatness? And so we know fatness can mean two different things. One, we talked about the fat around the heart. That's why the heart is certain size. Remove the fatness of the cushion so that you can feel the prick. But the fatness of the oil was good for the anointing of kings, priests, prophets, and it was eaten with pleasure and delight by all sorts of men. And he was basically, the olive tree said, so should I desert my useful position and roam to and fro? So when it says to promote yourself, the word here, promote, means, let me find it. I have it written down. So promoting yourself basically means to roam to and fro. Like, should I promote myself, eject myself, or erect myself from my useful position, where I'm being useful at, how Yah is using me? The word is, that's not it. Where'd it go? I'll get to it, because I'm all over the place right now. I'll find it. So the Hebrew word here for oil is 2132. The fig says the same thing. He said, shall I leave my position, my useful place, where Yah is using me for shade, for the position that I've been put in to rule over someone else? I'm being used right here for his glory, for his splendor, not for your agenda. Because his father again told the people, he said, I won't serve you guys. I'm not your king. I'm judging over you, but Yah is your king. And so the fig said the same thing. And you'll see in Song of Solomon 2:13, it's an example of what the fig is and the fig sweetness. And it gives an example of that. The vine also said the same thing. Why would we leave our position where we provide wine and to the king, to the people, make the heart merry. Yah delights in the wine that comes in season. Why would I leave my position to do something, again, your own agenda? And you can see here how we have a way with words. And if you really look at it, and he said, but my the son of my father's maidservant, basically saying the son of my father's whore, extracurricular activity is something you just picked up along the way because you didn't have to have her, and then you didn't have this child. And we see how these things, generational curses, are created because this child didn't have any respect for anything that pertained to his father's household. You didn't have respect for his house. You went to his house, killed his sons, and you spared one. So when it says he killed 70 sons, really they did 69 because one got away, the baby boy. So he had 71, which was this extra one, and then he appointed himself. And so he says, and then that's the example of the bramble, which means the buckthorn, or a tod, a thorn tree, something fruitless. Basically, this fruitless child, you pick him to rule over you. All these other trees have usefulness. They're useful. The olive tree gives oil for anointing, for the menorah, for the fig tree is food and fruit, and you can get it while you even out in the wilderness. It's good for shade. We know Adam and Chua thought that they could use it to put to cover up their nakedness. You know what I mean? But it's useful. The trees are useful. Everything else has a purpose, but the bramble, and if you get close to the bramble, even to seek shelter, it's gonna poke you. You're gonna be. It's nothing safe about the bramble. It's used for affliction. You use the thorns to afflict, right? So the brother who's gonna afflict you, right? You're gonna trust in my shadow, or him that covers you. You're gonna have him cover you. Basically saying, if you don't let me cover you, I'm gonna come at you with a vengeance. Either way it go, because I done came up with an agenda in my own heart. And so he speaks to the men about his father, his mother's people. And you can look at that too. You can see that whole thing where you go to your mother's people because they remember what happened. The stories that were told, oh, yeah, you know, they came and they conquered us and used the maid servant. So they already feel some kind of way. So yeah, we would rather have our own flesh and blood than Zerubbabel. Yeah, we'll deal with that. We'll back you. So they thought. So he made a covenant. They made a covenant too with the underworld because his whole, when you look at the whole big picture, the whole plan was a wickedly devised scheme, because first of all it involved murder, and then you took and went and got just any old kind of man. You didn't go seek counsel from wise men. You went and got some fools that was just ready to act up. And that's usually how it is when we gathering up a posse. It's just, you know, whatever, whoever. And we give them our agenda and they don't weigh it. It sound good right there while you're in the heat of your emotions or the heat of whatever's going on. Yes. Yes. And so we see that Jotham runs away. He ran away in the wilderness. And we know that some of our best lessons happen in the wilderness. So he's in the wilderness. He's in the wilderness for 3 years. And later on, you'll see, probably in chapters to come, what happened. But I just looked at where your provisions, just on side note, provisions are met in the wilderness. And you get to see the hand of Yah. Because he was still protected and covered wherever he was for 3 years. But then it says, after 3 years, verse 22 through 25, Yah sends an evil spirit. And so when you look at this, it says, Abimelech had reigned 3 years over Israel. Then Yah sent an evil spirit between Abimelech and the men of Shechem. And the men of Shechem dealt treacherously with Abimelech, that the cruelty done to the 70 sons of Jerubbaal might come, and their blood be lain upon Abimelech their brother, which slew them, and upon the men of Shechem, which aided him in the killing of his brethren. And the men of Shechem set liers in wait for him at the top of the mountains, and they robbed all that came along that way by them. And it was told to Abimelech. What did I say Shechem was? It was in the valley, right? So we know this is where the trade and different things happen. So first of all, mess with the economy. We're going to set liers. We're going to mess with the economy. We're going to rob the people coming through trading and buying and selling. And then you see that vengeance was taking place. And when I looked at this, it said Yah sent an evil spirit between. And then you get people all the time is like, well, how does that work? So does Yah deal with in the underworld? And we know that Yah employs all creation, so everything obeys him. Everything. He is the master over all. And so you can look at these and find these scriptures about him employing nature, or how all things are his and obey him. You see Psalms 19, Romans 8:18 through 25, Isaiah 65. You can look at Job 40 and 41, but specifically Job 41 and 11. Can somebody read that? So 3 years he thought he was in good. You kill your brothers, you reigning and ruling. Yeah, Job 41:11.
Who hath forbidden me that I should repay him? Whatsoever is under the whole heaven is mine.
Everything is his. So even the devil is his. I can use the evil that because he was a created being, right? He still has to do what I say do. So I can even use him for my glory. What he thinks he's doing for evil, I'm using it still for chastisement or for good. So he's not in control. 26 and 41, we see a civil war against Shechem. So this is Gaal the son of Ebed came to his brethren and went over to Shechem, and the men of Shechem put their confidence in him. So the evil spirit came, and now the brother of he comes and he speaks in the ears of his other brothers, and now they put their confidence in him. So now everybody he thought that was following him, they done turned their back on him. And he says, the brother of Gaal, Hamor, the name means Hamor, verse 26 through 28, where he says, and they went in the field and gathered their vineyard, and they trode the grapes, and they made merry, and they went into the house of their God, and did eat and drink, and cursed Abimelech. And Gaal the son of Ebed said, who is Abimelech? Now this is after they got good and full. Who is Abimelech? Like basic, okay, who is he? You know what that means when somebody was like, well, so-and-so said, do this. Who's that? It ain't my mama, it ain't my daddy. So basically that's what he's saying. They're denouncing him. And who is Abimelech and who is Shechem that we should serve him? Is he not the son of Jerubbaal and Zebul his officers? Serve the men of Hamor, the father of Shechem. For why should we serve him? And why would Yah, this people were under my hand, that then would I remove Abimelech? And he said to Abimelech, increase thine army and come out. So now he's enticing. And when Zebul, the ruler of the city, heard the words of Gaal, the son of Ebed, and his anger was kindled. And he sent messenger into Abimelech privily, saying, behold, Gaal, the son of Ebed, and his brother be come to Shechem, and behold, they fortify the city against thee. So again, you're looking at the names. So the brother Hamor, or the name Shamor, is in your Hebrew Strong's 2543, and it's a male ass or a male donkey. So a wild ass. So now we're following a wild ass now. So you go from the spirit it's a mess here, but you can see how Yah is using all of this, employing all of the ignorance to still deal with the blood that was spilled against the brothers, right? So he sent messenger unto Abimelech privily. So he sent, when you see the word privily, it is basically your Hebrews in your Hebrew Strong's 8649, and he sent him in fraud or deceit, to delude, deceive, betray, or Ramah, the Hebrew Strong. Yes. Like sometimes privy to information could be you're in a position to know certain things. But in this specific, the way it's been translated, this word in Hebrew means in a way to be fraudulent or deceit or to delude or to betray him. So the whispering in the ear, the causing of dissension, you go to Abimelech and you telling him something that he thinks he's privy to, but it's only to distract him or to deceive him. And so Ebed and his brother become to Shechem, and behold, they fortify the city against thee. So he's telling him what they're doing. Now, therefore, up by night, thou and the men that is with thee, and lie in wait in the field. And it shall be that in the morning, as soon as the sun is up, thou shalt rise early and set upon the city. And behold, when he and the people that are in that is with him come out against thee, they may as do to them as they shall find occasion. And Abimelech rose up and all the people that were with him by night, and they laid wait against Shechem in 4 companies. And so you see the strategy of Abimelech. He's fighting like his father fought, because you remember when Jerubbaal set the camp up into 3 different sections when he went to in last chapter to conquer the city. He divided them up into 3 different troops to make it look like it was a whole bunch of them, but really it wasn't. So you see the fighting strategy. Okay, he's his father's son. You see he's, I guess he's mighty in battle at some point. But when the hand of Yah is off him, it doesn't matter what he knows or what he's capable of doing. And that goes to, and I didn't write that scripture down, where it talks about giving your seed to just be careful where you lay your seed at. Because in the DNA, in the seed is the DNA. So you do inherit the things that your father is capable of doing, but then how it's cultivated is a whole nother story, because you see the mom's a concubine, so then she probably raised him up worshiping her elves and with her values, and so you have this strong man with no values, vain, empty, and then the whole premise of everything that he's doing is pride, because you went and killed all your brothers so that you could be king, but your dad was not king. You almost, it's crazy, huh? Like you assuming the position of Elohim, because Yah's the king. Because that position hasn't been ordained or coordinated to anyone else. This isn't something you desire. This is so you can see at the root of this is pride. So, I should have my glasses on. And then Gal saw the people. So they were entering the gate. We're going to stop at 36. And Gal saw the people and said to Zebul, behold, there come people down from the top of mountains. And Zebul said unto him, thou seest the shadow of the mountains, as if they were men. And Gal spake again and said, see, there come people down by the middle of the land, and another company come along by the plain of Meonim. Then said Zebul unto him, where now is thy mouth, wherewith thou saidest, who is Abimelech? All that talking you just did, who is Abimelech? Let's go fight. Where your mouth at now? I mean, it's so funny. There are so many idioms and so many things that correlate. If this is us, we talking message in the middle of the battle, everybody getting whooped. Okay, where you at now? Where you might, you done wrote a check, huh? Yeah, you done wrote a check. He said, who is Abimelech that we should serve? You can hear it. Oh, yeah, I thought you said you was gonna do this. You got happy on that wine. You went in the temple, talking mess. Is not this the people that thou hast despised? Go out, I pray now, and fight with them. Go fight. So basically, you see what he did. He instigated a situation. Your mouth wrote a check, and now we're gonna see what you can do. And we know that whole thing where let your yeas be yea and your nays be nay. We do not. So many of the things that we do, and it's funny. It's like it's in us. It's in our DNA, and then when you see it function, or when you see it outwardly being portrayed, you like, gosh, I can really assimilate with that. And we know that we're told your word is everything, right? So it's better to not speak than to say something and not be able to perform it, because you done talked a good one now, and we laughing at it now for hundreds and thousands of years later, right? And he said, Gal went out before the men in Shechem, and he fought with Abimelech, and Abimelech chased him, and he fled before him, and many were overthrown and wounded, even unto the entering of the gates. And Abimelech dwelt at Arumah, and Zebul thrust out Gaal and his brethren, that they should not dwell in Shechem. So he threw them out. And then we see that Abimelech, in 42 through 45, Abimelech takes Shechem and demolishes the city. And it came to pass on the morrow that the people went out into the field, and they told Abimelech. And he took the people and divided them again into three companies, and laid wait in the field, and looked, and behold, the people were come forth out of the city, and he rose up against them and smote them. And Abimelech and the company that was with him rushed forward and stood in the entering of the gate of the city, and the two other companies ran upon all the people that were in the fields and slew them. And Abimelech fought against the city all that day, and took the city, and slew the people that was therein, and beat down the city, and sold it with salt. And we know that the salt, what that represented, when you just basically, like they said with Lot's wife, she was turned into a pillar of salt, or just basically waste to nothing. He destroyed the city, plundered it, probably burnt it up, because that's what you do. That's what they do to make it not exist anymore. And you see 9:46 through 49, the remnant fled to the tower, and Abimelech killed all who were left. And 46 says, and when all the men of the tower of Shechem heard that, they entered into and hold of the house of El Berith, or the God that they made the covenant with, not Elohim, the covenant making God, but the El that they made a covenant with. And it was told to Abimelech that all the men of the tower of Shechem were gathered together. And Abimelech got him up to Mount Zalmon, and he and all the people that were with him. And Abimelech took an axe in his hand, and cut down a bow from the trees, and took it and laid it on his shoulders, and said to the people that were with him, what ye see me do, make haste, and do as I have done. And all the people likewise cut down every man his bow, and followed Abimelech, and put them up to the hold, and set the hold on the fire upon them, so that all the men of the tower of Shechem died also, about 1,000 men and women. So you see that the remnant was also killed. So he killed the remnant of the people. And where do people run in the time of trouble? What's supposed to be, where's the safety supposed to be? In the towers, in the tower, to be up and above, to keep the enemy out. But we knew who was our strong tower. Yeah. And so he demolished the city. The men, women, children all died that day. So it looks like he's doing a good thing. Looks like he's winning. Okay, let's look at 50 through 57. Abimelech went against Thebez and took it, but was killed when he sought to destroy the tower. Then went Abimelech to Thebez, and encamped against Thebez, and took it. But there was a strong tower within the city, and thither fled all the men and women and all they of the city, and shut it to them, and gat them up in the top of the tower. And Abimelech came up unto the tower, and fought against it, and went hard unto the door of the tower to burn it with fire. And a certain woman cast a piece of millstone upon Abimelech's head, and all to break his skull. Then he called hastily unto the young man of his armor bearer, and said unto him, draw thy sword, and slay me, that men say not of me, a woman slew him. And his young man thrust him, and threw, and he died. And when the men of Israel saw that Abimelech was dead, they depart every man unto his place. Thus Yah rendered the wickedness of Abimelech, which he did unto his father, in slaying his 70 brethren. And all the evil of the men of Shechem did Yah render upon their head, and upon them came the curse of Jotham the son of Jerubbaal. So he said, and a certain woman cast a millstone upon his head, and he said, make haste and kill me, because I don't want it to be said that a woman slew me. But what are we saying right now? Who did it? Yeah, she immobilized him. But you, to your own demise. And it's written that a woman is the one, the whole story is still here being told. Exactly. And so you see so many different aspects of who Yah is, and just the whole prophecy or the parable, the curse that came upon Shechem and Abimelech, spoken of by his brother. The same place with the blessings and curses. If this day you follow me, you'll be blessed in the city, blessed in the field, blessed when you come, blessed when you go. Not when you go make up a new law, not when you follow your own law, not when you follow your own heart. There are no blessings in, like Moria just said it too, in yourself. Can't trust yourself. Your best devised plan is still your worst when it's not in the will of Elohim. And we just see Yah as our kinsman redeemer. It looks horrible. All 70 of his children died, and then the one that you had by the stray lady over here they died at the hands of this child, but you have a remnant, one left. And so we see how even Zerubbabel in his latter years, what we talked about the last time, his failure of you do great things, and then it just so falls in line with the lesson we just had, the sermon. Paul said he is trying to lay a hold of that which has apprehended him. He's pressing toward the mark. No room for failure at this point where you've been used greatly for this, and then you get lax and you stop exercising Torah and stop exercising what Yah has put in you, and the triumphs and the accomplishments that he's made, and then you just get laxed in the end. And you see he made the ephod, which turned the people away from their attention from Yah, and you looking at this ephod, and it just eventually it evoked idolatry in their hearts, because our hearts are pulled towards, our hearts are always being pulled south. It don't take much. It don't take much. It take getting in the car, driving somewhere, and somebody frustrating you. It don't take, because we are born in sin, shaped in iniquity. I mean, we formed in sin, shaped in iniquity. We are that fallen part of us, that fallen part of nature. So Torah always has to be the reference point. Our point of reference always has to be Torah. Always has to be Torah. And we see so many mistakes throughout this whole lesson, throughout the whole thing, where you see pride and self-appointing in this whole situation, in this whole story. We went through it pretty fast. I brought that out for you so that you can see it. And here it goes right here, promoted. So the word promoted is nuah. Sure, Hebrew Strong's 5128, and it means to scatter, stagger, to go to and fro, to wander. When he says, why should I, like the trees, why should I be promoted? Why will I come up, be rooted up? Because what is a tree? A tree is rooted, right? Sometimes the trees, those roots run deep. They can run for 50 to 100 feet long. Why would I be rooted up to stagger, to go to and fro, to wander, to follow your agenda? That's basically what the word promoted means here. And the tree, atzah, it means, or etz, that's in your Hebrew Strong 6089, or atzah is 6095, and it means to be properly, or to fasten to. So the tree is already properly fastened. Once it's gotten big and it renders shade and nourishment and everything else, it's full grown, it has all the nutrients. Why should I go up and remove myself from the source to chase after some other mess? And that's us too in Torah. Why, how do we, and we do, and when you look back, it was a lot of it was ignorance, because you see the curses of Deuteronomy 28 being brought over here and stripped of your identity, your culture, your language, and given the L of our oppressors. And you see where we've gotten so far away from Torah, but then to get back in it, how do you then go back to your old way? Is really hard to, when you find the true source of what you were connected to and the nourishment, and it's good for you to go back and eat junk, It is like eating vomit, absolutely. So to make a covenant with another, when the covenant keeper, we see what he does here, it might Yep, he's almighty. And it's not what it might look a certain way, but it's always you can. His hand is in it. So we see how it looked like Abimelech was winning. He winning this fight. He going through whooping. Like I say, where you mouth at now? Yeah, he was skilled and crafted, but he's not stronger than Yah, and he can't out. You can't. You can't override his plan. So when he even, like I said, when he employs even nature. He employs the enemy. He turns the king's heart. He can do whatever he pleases. He sent so he did that to Saul. He sent the spirit to him when he disobeyed. Okay, you know what? I'm gonna go ahead and drive you mad and put you out of your place, and I'll anoint another. And so that's what happens. Like I say, one monkey don't stop no show. And so we will, just go through here and look at some of the lessons. It always helps if you have your Strongs to look at these words, because English does water things down, because you just look at, oh, being promoted, oh, like getting a new job or but when you look at risen above, exactly. But when you look at what it really means, it makes the text and the context and the story come so much more to life. This book is alive, and what I saw, you might see something different. Not saying that the story is not the same story, but something else will be revealed to you. And again, the places, the people, the things, the names, what the silver represented. That's what I looked at to make sure, like, okay, Yeshua was, he was betrayed for 30 shekels of silver. And then you saw what happened with Judas when he did that. He went and hung himself afterwards. So all of these things all connect. This book is a puzzle. So it's a treasure. It's alive. And if we don't have any more questions, I'm done. Nothing? No? All right, ladies.